Welcome to the Kling Connection Travel Talk podcast, where the world of travel comes to life through real conversations. Hosted by Sean Kling, each episode explores the highs and lows of life on the road, connecting with travelers, industry insiders, and digital nomads to uncover expert tips, budget hacks, and inspiring stories. Whether you're a weekend explorer, a full-time adventurer, or simply wanderlust curious, Sean brings first-hand advice, destination insights, and honest takes from those shaping the global travel scene. Join Sean Kling.
Hey, Kling Connection fans. Well, today I've got a really cool person that I've known personally for a number of years, and we're having her as a guest today. Her name is Major Jessica Odell, U.S. Army, retired. And she has quite a great story about how she traveled around. She was a military brat. She was all over the world and then finally settled in the great state of Texas. So, we have so much to talk about with Jessica. She's an extraordinary person, and you will not be disappointed in today's show. So without further ado, Jess, could you tell me a little bit about, who you are, where you come from, and a little bit about your background?
Yep. So I was born in Germany to military parents, got to travel all over Europe for the first 4 years of my life and have practically zero memory of it. I have photos. And then once we got back to the States, I was around age 4. After that, we moved just about every year. New York, West Virginia, Tennessee, Texas, Kentucky, Arkansas, Mississippi. Just everywhere. So my parents had divorced, and then I got to go move out to Hawaii and be a high schooler out there for 2 years, then a college student for a year before coming back to the States. And then I just continued to move. I decided to join the military myself and then just kept moving.
So it's kind of interesting because obviously you were born on a military installation, American citizen. And that's kind of cool because you don't really run into that many. I've met one person other than you in my entire life that was born in Germany. That their father was in the Army back in the late 70s, and he was stationed at, I think, Ramstein. And he was born in a German hospital. He actually wasn't born on the base. And I said to him, are you a U.S. citizen and a German citizen? He goes, no, I don't qualify as a German citizen. I'm just an American citizen. But in order for him to get any birth documents, he had to reach out to Germany as well as the U.S. military to get it. Have you found that as well, or?
So I was born on the base, but my brothers were born off base. So they had that situation. So they have to go through all of that. But no, I was pretty simple right there on the base.
So your father was a 20-year man?
Yes. I think all in all, he did 25, something like that. He retired CW3. Yeah, he did logistics, but his forte was computers. He was building computers all throughout the 80s. But back then, you may see one computer in an entire household. And it was more towards the end of the 80s into the 90s. Man, we had computer parts everywhere. And then by the 90s, we had a computer in each room. He built all of that from scratch. So he should have been that. But he was logistics. And
you got to tour Europe, which is cool, but no memory of it. But yeah, you can always say you're there. You can put it on a little map or something.
Right. Yeah. I've been to Switzerland. I've been all over the place. I've been to France. I've been to, no memory or recollection of it. But I did get to go back as a contractor, a Department of Defense contractor. I did get to go back to Germany and a couple other places in the world. And
that's really cool though. But I imagine as a military brat moving from Germany to Tennessee to, wherever, the Fort Campbell, wherever you were stationed at, your family was stationed at. I imagine, as somebody that was, today people live as a nomadic lifestyle by choice, and you really didn't have a choice. You had to go places, but I imagine it allowed you to make a lot of friends, connections, experience a lot of things that, somebody that starts kindergarten and goes to 12th grade at the same school district doesn't get to experience it. And honestly, what are your biggest takeaways from that? Because that's a pretty unique thing.
I think it gave me the capability to be kind of like an empath of sorts, where I could be empathetic, sympathetic, and relate to just about anyone, regardless of color, religion, social class, all the things, right? Because when you move, especially year to year, you're always the new person. You're always that underdog. People are always scrutinizing everything you do. You're up there on the shelf in a glass house and people are, so it kind of taught me early, watch everything you say and everything you do, because people watch and they judge you. And then it also just kind of gave you that skill set to be able to talk to anybody. You didn't have a choice.
Right,
and I think it also made my brothers and I super tight, because every year we moved and we started off with no friends. We were the only friends we had for several months until people got to know us and, we acclimated or whatever.
So then you go to Hawaii. You wind up in Hawaii, and then you go to college in Hawaii as well as high school. Now, where were you at in Hawaii? Were you at Pearl Harbor? Were you at
no, so in that particular case, my parents had divorced, and my mom, she married a full-blooded Egyptian. And he was a civil engineer, and he got a job out in Hawaii with a construction company. So I got to just be just a kid, a high schooler in Hawaii for 2 years. And then when they came back to the mainland for a different job, I went ahead and stayed out there and just attended my first year of college. And then I was like, I need to go back to the mainland. I need to be near family, because being that far away at 18, 19 years old, completely isolated, I thought, man, if anything goes wrong, there's nobody here. Nobody. that was the first really rude awakening to, family is important.
Right.
You grow up and you're super independent and you're super self-sufficient because you're constantly moving. But at the same time, that taught me how important being at least in proximity to family was.
Right. No, and when I'm being the history geek that I am, you're living in Germany where World War II ended, and you're born. I mean, sorry, not born. You go to Hawaii where World War II for the United States begins. Right. And you experienced this like crazy. I imagine you probably visited like places like maybe Pearl Harbor or, some of that stuff. And, that's kind of cool, especially at a young age. Maybe, now as a veteran, you can grasp a lot of that stuff, but maybe as a teenager, maybe you didn't take it in as much. I don't know. That's cool.
I agree with you, because I have gone back and, as a Department of Defense contractor, they would send me TDY, to Germany, to back to Hawaii, PACOM, all those things. So I did notice that, okay, I really didn't appreciate it as much, but I'm still thankful that my parents took me anyway, because it still was in the back of my mind. And then as I got older and then went back, it was almost like doubled the relevance. It doubled the, the sentiment of what occurred there. It just amplified that whole experience.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting. We had when I was growing up in Pennsylvania, we had an American Legion that was named after one of the bandsmen. It was on I think it was the Oklahoma, and he was a musician, and he was killed at Pearl Harbor. And he's buried in the local cemetery up there in my old hometown, and they named the American Legion after him. So, eventually our show, the Kling Connection, will be making that trip to Hawaii. And, but I always thought that was interesting. But so back to you. I mean, like, you've lived all these places as a kid. Where was your favorite place?
Ooh, that's a tough one. Ooh, that's really tough. I mean, Hawaii was incredible to go to as a child. I was in high school, but let's face it, still child, because I didn't have the pressure of, needing employment full time and all the things. I mean, cost of living out there is crazy. So a lot of people don't even get to enjoy Hawaii for, fully for what it is. Now, what I was able to do was, on weekends or Wednesdays, I remember Wednesdays we got out at like 12:15 and everybody went surfing. And I was like, what? Are you serious? And we'd get on the city bus, we'd get, or somebody, when they finally got a car or something, we'd all pile up. So I got to enjoy all the different beaches. I even got to enjoy some of the different cultures because, there is a little bit of prejudicial treatment to what they call haoles, or Caucasians that come to the island. But one, I'm Italian, so I tan really awesome out there. I have really dark hair, and they saw me for who I was. And so I didn't really have a problem. So they wouldn't mind, they being, locals, they wouldn't mind taking me to places where maybe it's not as accepted, or it's frowned upon, or unwanted. And I got to see indigenous cultures and experience that, just by simply being a teenager who didn't have a full-time job or family, to feed and all the other things. Like I noticed my parents didn't have the same experience I had because they were always working. So I was incredibly fortunate for that. Outside of that, the other place I liked, and I know it's going to sound so funny because the world's going to be like, oh, what? But El Paso. My dad was, we were stationed in El Paso. This was the mid 90s. Okay. So like 93, maybe 92, 93, 94. I don't remember. It's kind of all blurring at the moment, but the diversity, the food, you had malls and shopping and things everywhere. I mean, it was such a diverse location, even off the base, because sometimes a lot of the diversity you saw was on the base because, as military, we're from all sorts of backgrounds. So I don't know, but it was, again, I was like 4th, 5th grade. So different perspective back then, but I got to be a kid. There were so many things to do. We were scraping knees, climbing trees, all the good things. I had such a diverse group of friends.
And Texas is like, we'll get on Texas here, but I do have to say this one thing. Western Texas and Southern Texas and Eastern Texas are nothing alike. None of that. Nope. It's like 3 different countries.
It really is. Yeah, it really is. And I can say that too, because now that's where we have settled, is what some people call deep East Texas, like basically close to the border with Louisiana. Like I can throw a rock at Shreveport almost. So it is completely different from the rest of Texas.
So you go and you go to college in Hawaii, and you leave. Where do you finish your college career?
So I ended up in Ohio because, again, my stepdad, so he was a civil engineer. Well, he got a job as a professor. So after he did about a year there, he called me up and he goes, hey, I can sponsor you, and you can get free tuition, get good grades, which that wasn't a problem, but just, what do you think? And I thought, and that gets me back near family, because my dad and my brothers were still in Arkansas. So, now my mom and my stepdad are in Ohio. What am I doing way out in Hawaii by myself at 19 years old?
Right.
So I took the opportunity. And so I went out to Ohio and attended Bowling Green State University out there. And again, completely different culture. And then not just that, but then there's Dearborn, Michigan, which we used to, frequent because, again, my stepdad was full-blooded Egyptian. Dearborn, Michigan is like a foreign country right here in the United States. The street signs were all in Arabic, the stores, the shop, everything was all in Arabic, which was great because, we got to taste incredible cuisine. We got the freshest fruits and vegetables. I learned how to I can cook Middle Eastern food better than I can cook any American dish. So.
And that's what I was going to kind of lead into here is, you've brought up your stepfather a lot. So it seems that you and him had a good relationship, and Absolutely. He seemed to be a very caring man and somebody that holds a place in your heart. And being Egyptian, that's kind of unique as well. And what did you take away from him? And like, what did he enlighten your world with? I mean, obviously your father moving around from different military bases, got you that experience, but having a person from a different culture, completely different culture and bring up, I mean, how has he played into your life and what has he brought to you?
I kind of give him credit for helping me get through my teenage years. And now that I'm a mom to 2 teenage daughters, I understand how horrible it must have been for my mother. Because we were, at that time, we were butting heads a lot. My stepdad brought a sense of calm to both of us. I mean, he was really great with both of us. And he really kind of held us all together. He's very brainy. Being an engineer, I'm also very brainy and kind of techie and nerdy. And so sometimes we just got to bond like that, where my mom's kind of a different brainy. She's also incredibly intelligent, but just different in different ways. So being a civil engineer, one of the things that he specialized in was it's called underground pipe bursting. So it's a type of construction where you dig 2 pits under, like like say downtown somewhere, or a road, pipe needs to be replaced. Well, you're not going to dig up the whole road and block everything off. So they just dig 2 pits. They drop this machinery down, and it's got this mechanical head on it, and it goes through the pipe And then while it's going through the pipe, behind it, it's busting the old pipe and replacing it with a new pipe. It's the coolest thing I've ever seen. And he actually took me on a few real live, projects where it was being done. I was like, oh, this is just so, I nerded out over stuff like that. So I think what was cool was he didn't see me as just, a female teenager. He saw me as an individual with a curious mind, regardless of being boy or girl. He loved that I was so curious. And so he just, I don't know what's the word. He took me out there into the world, with him. Let me show you all this stuff. So as long as I was showing curiosity, he was ready and right there to, capitalize on that and just open my eyes to a lot of things. It was really cool.
He seems like somebody that you are very proud of.
Yes. Oh, 100%. And I'm not downplaying my dad either. My dad is incredibly intelligent. He is very technically skilled. When, mom and dad household were together, I wasn't at that level yet. I was still kind of doing girly things and whatever. I really wasn't showing as much interest in the same things he was interested in. So the ability to really connect and bond over things were, kind of sporadic. But as I got older and got more into those things, and now I bond with my dad over this kind of stuff all the time. Like, for example, my daughters, their birthdays are coming up. One of the things I want to do is sit with them, and I'm going to get my dad involved, and we are going to find all the computer components, and we are going to build our own desktop PCs. I've built my own before. So what I want
you're a tech geek.
Yeah, kinda. Enough to be dangerous, but I don't know how to code. I can look at code and go, I think this is where the issue is, but I have to start from scratch. It's way over my head. But I want to, encourage that, in my kids, my daughters, is don't, just because you see all boys doing something, if you have the capability and the itch and the dedication to something, do it. Try it. If you failed, then okay, you failed. If not, okay, cool. So that's what we're gonna do this summer is we're gonna build their desktop PCs. But I'm gonna bring my dad in and let him, bond with his grandkids too.
So your stepfather then he teaches you about the Egyptian, I would say Arabic culinary, culinary stuff and tradition, and a lot of people don't realize, and you and I have worked in the same industry before, and we've met people all over. I mean, we're both in the insurance industry. That's how we met, and I've met a lot of people that are from Egypt that are Christians, and people don't think that of Egypt as having Christians. They think it's like a Muslim country, that type of thing. And, but the culture is a little different. Egyptian Christians are maybe a little bit different than, say, a Christian that lives in France, but they worship the same God. And, what type of cultural experiences did he teach you about and culinary stuff? You said you love to cook.
Yeah. So I'll start with the cultural part. So my mom and my stepdad were actually married in a mosque. She's Catholic. She grew up Catholic, still Catholic. He's Muslim. We went to the mosque. I was in the room with women and children. I went ahead and wore the headscarf out of respect. I was, oh my gosh, how old was I at that time? 16, 17. Yep, is when I received my first marriage proposal. That was eye-opening. So what happened was, obviously, of age, right, in their culture, I did not have a wedding ring on, but here I am in the mosque. And so many of the members of the mosque would go to my stepdad and ask for my hand in marriage because they noticed I did not have a ring. So that was very interesting. And then again, when we moved to Ohio, and that's where they settled, we would go to Dearborn, and every time we would go eat, Lebanese restaurant or any of the other, anywhere, anytime they would see I didn't have a ring. I actually had 3 marriage proposals before I actually had the first one I got to say yes to. And we always joke about that. And I'm not laughing like it's something to laugh at. It's just kind of funny, like to have 3 marriage proposals, from individuals. I mean, I could have been the most psycho woman they would have ever met in their lives. And my heart, I felt kind of sad. I'm like, what if I was like one of those people that would wake up in the middle of the night with a knife in my hand? I mean, just
like the bunny in the pot type of thing.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, but anyway, so, but yeah, no, food wise, oh my goodness, I can make some they're called, I forgot what the Egyptians call them, but they're stuffed grape leaves. But I like them Egyptian style where they're hot. I don't like how the Greek restaurants make them cold. I can make a mean, fresh from chickpeas. I can make hummus. I can make baba ganoush. I like falafel, fatouche. I make a mean kushari. But you ask me to make an American dish, and I'm like, I know how to make chicken nuggets.
I make a hell of a bowl of cereal. I make a great bowl of cereal.
Yeah, I got some frozen meatballs. I'll throw that in the thing, and we'll have some spaghetti. And so we laugh about that in our household too. Is I'm the cleaner in our household because growing up I had no desire to cook, and then when I got to taste other cultures and what they make, all of a sudden I was like, I want to make this. This is what I want to eat.
So now you go to college. How do you start your military career? Like, how does do you go enlisted? Do you go green to gold? Do you start as a commission? How do you start your whole military career?
Back then, it was called the simultaneous membership program. So I just always knew, even going into college, I had thought about doing Peace Corps or something like that. I knew I wanted to be part of something bigger than myself. I wanted to serve in some capacity, but I also knew I had to make, ends meet and pay bills. And so I thought, well, how do I do this? And at first I was thinking Peace Corps, but then I was thinking, wait, military to me, and this is how I processed it at that time. And I think it's still a pretty decent analogy. It's kind of like Peace Corps, but you get paid pretty decent. You still get to live in some pretty good accommodations, and you get to, they send you to training, and you put all sorts of skills and training on your resume. So I thought, let me just do that. So at one point, I just kind of went into that. I joined the National Guard in Ohio first while I was attending ROTC. And so that there was like a level of catch up there because I came into ROTC in college my last 2 years. So
back in those days too, I'm not sure when you enlisted. I know when I enlisted, women were only trained at certain bases. When I was in Leonard Wood was a basic training for women, and I believe it was Jackson. And then men went to Leonard Wood and Jackson as well, but they also went to Fort Knox, Fort Benning, and Fort Sill, but there wasn't women. Was it the same when you went through?
No. Well, at least not to my knowledge. So when you did the simultaneous membership program, what they did was they sent us to something called LTC, Leadership Training Course, which is kind of like a boot camp, but consolidated into 30 days or 30 something days, somewhere around there. It's about a month and a half. It's not the full blown. So they take all these, cadets, and we catch up on the first 2 years of ROTC and get a little flavor of boot camp, all packed into one. Then you leave, and then that's when they made you at the E5 pay rate while you're doing ROTC at the same time. So there was a lot of two things going on at the same time. And then I did that for 2 years, went into the Intel Corps.
Okay. Yeah. I was enlisted, so it was a little bit different. I did my physical in Philadelphia, jumped a plane, went to Fort Knox. It was all men. I didn't see a woman for about 12 weeks. And, when you see your first woman after 12 weeks and you're 19 years old,
I imagine. What do they say? You're a real world 2, but a boot camp 10 or something.
Yeah. But I know that when we went through that, there was no women at certain bases. And when I went to AIT later on, we wound up seeing women, and in my MOS, there was women, but still women couldn't be in combat arms when I was in. They had to be a support troop or something like that. And I was what they call a pogue. I'll be the first to admit I wasn't an infantryman or nothing, but that was interesting that the women there today I wouldn't even look at, but at that time I was like, is that my future wife?
Of course.
So then you get your commission. Do you get your commission in the National Guard, or how does that work?
So I did 2 years National Guard, and actually it was going out, to Fort Knox and going through that training that made me say, I do not want to do this part-time. I want to be balls to the wall every day, adrenaline junkie. This is incredible. Sign me up. So right then and there, I switched, wanting to go, just stay in the National Guard to, I want to do this active duty. Something about, we were out there, we were in the field, rucksacks on, everything. We're at the tree line, and the Blackhawks are flying in to come pick us up. I remember looking at that. I'm covered in goosebumps right now. I remember looking up as we're laying in the grass, like right at the wood line, getting ready to get up and go run to the Blackhawks. I remember as they were coming in going, this is exactly what I want. This is like, you can't pay me enough to do this.
I'll tell you, everybody has that moment.
That's what I meant. Like, I don't even have to be paid to do this is what I meant to say, not the other way around. It was just like, I can't believe you're going to pay me to do this. Like, yes, where do I sign up? That kind of thing. So,
everybody has that moment. Mine was when I was standing on the hills, and if you've been to Fort Knox, you've heard of agony, misery, and heartbreak. They're the three mountains that are like, 45-degree angle. And I remember standing up top, and I saw probably 20 M1 Abrams, and at that time they were still using M60 tanks as well. And they came rolling up the hill, and I said, "Oh my God, I'm in the U.S. Army."
Yeah.
And I was like, "Yeah,
I don't want to be anywhere else. Like, this is incredible." Yep.
So you go into active duty.
Yep.
Okay.
After I graduated, I went active duty. I had a summer where, because I was a late comer to ROTC, most people get reassessed between their junior and senior year. But because I kind of I came in late, and I did an extra year of college, by the way, because I had 2 majors. So that's a different story. But basically, my assessment of my performance and all the things happened after I went to the final camp. So for a whole summer, I was just in limbo. I had no idea what the Army was going to do with me. I still was waiting for my branch assignment, all the things. Well, then I finally get it at the end of summer, and they give me 24 hours to pack my bags and get to Fort Huachuca. I kid you not. It was
in the middle of nowhere. Fort Huachuca is in the middle of nowhere.
Yep. So I had to go from Ohio all the way. Yep. I had 24 hours to pack my stuff and start that trip. And I was like, welcome to the Army is all I could remember. And then I ended up at Fort Huachuca, and my first duty assignment right after I finished the, basic intel school was South Korea. And I was up there by the DMZ, Camp Hovey, Camp Casey. I don't even know if they're in existence anymore. Had a blast up there. I mean, we were, I'm broken because of it, but we were in the field all the time. We were wrecking and packing and marching and doing and security and all the things all the time.
And back then that was 2nd Infantry Division, wasn't it?
Yeah. Yes. Yes, it was. Yeah. Yes, that's correct. So I was in the field.
You were there.
It was almost like, go ahead.
Okay, go ahead.
No, so it was like and at the time, it was funny because in the Intel Basic course, that's when I met my husband, and I met my husband through family. I had come home for the Christmas break, part of my, Intel Basic course. And I will never forget this. I flew in, and my dad comes to pick me up. I call my stepmom. I'm like, "Mom, I can't wait to see you," all that stuff. And she's like, "I've got somebody for you to meet." And I remember, I don't even know why I thought it was going to amount to anything. I was like, I don't want to meet anybody. I'm independent now. I want to make sure I'm financially taking care of myself. And, the whole boss babe, independent woman, whatever. That was on my mind. And her famous last words were, "I'm not asking you to marry him. I'm just asking you to meet him." He's my husband 19 years later. So I meet him, and about 7, 8 days, 9 days. Well, I don't remember how many days it was, but very too soon after meeting him, I remember having a conversation with him on the phone, and I felt panic, sheer panic, because it hit me. I was talking to my husband. Now, I was the type of girl that if I dated somebody, it was 3 years, 2 years, like long. And I'm thinking, if I dated people in the past that I had known for years, didn't end in marriage, how in the world am I supposed to know this after a week? Like, right. It didn't make sense. I was mad. I'm very, I'm a Christian. I believe I have, strong faith. I was having conversation with God, and I was mad at God, not like in the literal sense, but I was like, "What are you doing? I'm going to Korea. I'm about to be, independent, all the things. And now you drop this guy on me. Like, what am I supposed to do?" I was so mad, but I just let it go. I just kept the faith. God knows what he's doing. And eventually it got to the point where instead of me waiting to come back from Korea and then getting married, we ended up halfway through going, "You know what? It's inevitable. Get your butt out here." And so he did. He came out there. He started working on his bachelor's at that time. even if I was in the field for like 2 weeks, and the 1 week that we would come back and do reset, we'd have some time off. He and I would hop on a train. We went snowboarding. We'd go to ice skating rinks. We went to, random, markets and stuff. We ate local. I mean, we just immersed ourselves, and both of us had a blast. I mean, he had such an open mind. We had the time of our lives out there in Korea.
It's interesting, listening to your whole story, because, you're born in Germany, a military base, you tour the world, your mom marries an Egyptian, you're living in Hawaii, you go to Ohio, you go to Korea to meet your husband in Korea, not even in America.
No. I met him in the U.S. I flew from Arizona back to Arkansas, where they were.
Oh, okay.
And that's when they were like, "Oh, hey, cool, you're here for Christmas. I've got somebody I want you to meet." And I was like, "No, I don't want to meet."
It's now.
But I took him out there. Can you imagine being a guy and being uprooted and moving out to a foreign country? I mean, he was such a trooper about it, and just he was so open minded. He's like, "Heck yeah!" Like he's down for anything.
So you wind up in Korea. Did you get to go to the DMZ, and at least as a tourist, and check that out? That building that people can walk in and check it out. And
No, we didn't. We never got to do the tour or anything like that. And as much time as I kind of spent in and around there, we were more like, let's go see the rest. Let's go see the rest of Korea.
So what did you like about Korea? I mean, was the food good? Were the people good? Was the country interesting? Was there anything cool there that you
I would say all of the above. I mean, the locals were great, because I did get to actually live off base. I had to fill out a packet like Bible thickness kind of, but we got that whole thing finalized, and I got approved to live off base with my husband. So we got to live off base. And so, I had Korean neighbors, we had the shops right around us that we went to, instead of just being isolated to shopping on base, and then of course, because we traveled all the time and didn't have problems, just, picking a different train station, getting off and exploring. I mean, everywhere we went, everybody was so great. We weren't judged just because, we were military, and I'm sure it was because he looked like a normal, civilian man. He didn't have high and tight and all that. And then I looked like a normal, woman, because in the military, I don't have to have a certain haircut or anything. So to them, we probably just looked like normal tourists. But, the food was also incredible. But I think it was just the diversity of things to do. I mean, there's so many different places to hike. Like I said, I learned how to snowboard. And then there's things you can do on the water. I mean, just the diversity of it all. And it's all within train rides away. You just hop on a train. And the other thing that was crazy was your cell service. This is 2006, by the way. You could just be talking to somebody on your cell phone and go underground in a tunnel while you're on a train and never lose reception.
Wow. I never knew that.
They're so technologically advanced over there. It was incredible. I mean, it really just opened my eyes to, man, I love being an American, but there are some other cultures out here that are pretty darn, ahead of the game.
And so in 2006, you're looking at, it's, almost 20 years ago now, that you're looking at, that's the height of the war in Iraq and Afghanistan, really, yes. where people are being deployed to Iraq like crazy. I know that in 2005, I lost a friend of mine in Iraq, and he was a kid I coached football. He was younger, and I coached Pee Wee football when I first got out of the service. And I'll never forget, it was my birthday in 2005, and I go into a gas station. I look down on the front of a newspaper. It says, "Local boy killed in Iraq." And I was like, I didn't even join. He joined the Marine Corps. And, you see this going on in 2005, 2006. And what happens to you when you leave Korea? What happens
So that was right around the time the military was completely restructuring and reorganizing the brigade combat teams. So before that, it looked slightly different. I wasn't a part of that, but when I got out to Korea, they had pretty much established the brigade combat teams. So then when I got to Fort Hood, they were doing that. So I got put into a unit that didn't even exist, stood up, ground up. I think at the time, the brigade commander was like a senior captain. I mean, because we all had to do stand-ins while everybody was getting assigned and flown in and, moved. So, I mean, it was really funny, like just watching people hold positions 4 and 5 times above their pay grade and rank. But, it was all temporary. So I got to watch how a unit was built from zero. That was a pretty cool experience. And then they told us we had 1 year to stand up and then deploy. It was unheard of at the time. And right before we actually left, several of us were feeling really uneasy. And it's not because of the capabilities or lack of. It was just so unheard of for a unit to go from zero to deployed in 1 year. There's so much readiness that has to be done. And we just weren't sure we were there. So we got sent out to the NTC, National Training Center. They said, nope, you guys are kicking butt, taking names. You're passing everything that we need you to do. So next thing I know, we're on a plane to Afghanistan.
And that's kind of a cultural shock too. I mean, you again, the history hat in me tells me that, you hadn't seen that type of deployabilities probably since the Second World War.
Yeah.
They were pulling guys in, drafting them, and 6 months later they were in Europe or in the Pacific.
Yep. You only read about that stuff in books.
Yeah. And then you're in Afghanistan, Yeah.
There were a lot of really long days, but I'll tell you, I can't think of a quicker and more meaningful and lasting camaraderie building than something like that. I mean, because you really are a family. Because, you go around to other units, but that unit, I mean, I still to this day have so many family members, so to speak. And it was because of that. Like we did something that was almost unheard of or, only in the history books.
Right. So then you jump on a plane and you're in Afghanistan. What's that like?
It was the best time of my life. And unfortunately, about 90% of what I want to say is all classified. And I'm not saying that to be because I think I'm cool or anything crazy like that, but literally that's where I got to be an intelligence professional. Because as you know, stateside, we can't do any of those things. The Department of Defense that's not their role and responsibility. We can't do collections. We can't train and do. I mean, even though we're not wanting to collect on U.S. people, it was how do we train as we fight if we're here? And it was very challenging. So to be able to finally get somewhere where that is what we are designed to do, that is what our military command wants us to do, is our job. It was like, oh, okay, cool. And so you still had quite a bit of red tape, but like you just got to do your job. And that was collecting intelligence. And I'll tell you, at that time, knowledge management was such an issue. In fact, it was such an issue that they made a whole profession called knowledge manager, like a position called a knowledge manager. What was happening at that time is we deployed into the field right before I got there. We, the government, had deployed so many new cool toys that would collect information, and they collect from the soldier, collect from the, command post, command to the head, collect from the headquarters, collect from strategic. We were collecting so much information all at one time, but we didn't have enough people trained and experienced in analyzing all of it, looking at it from the 10, 15, 20 different angles, synthesizing it, packaging, and then giving it to a commander and saying, this is what all of this information means, and this is what I recommend we do next. So that was the most challenging part of that job, was even though the red tape was lifted and now we get to collect and now we get to do the things that we were trained to do. Oh, holy cow. It was so much. It was so much. And then we were trying to find information that the previous unit had and the unit before them, because you don't just want to take what's in front of you at face value. You want to pair it with the history and put it into context before you start talking about stuff. And it was wild. It was really wild. But
so you see a big rotation of in Afghanistan of active duty, National Guard, Reserve, Marines, yes, Air Force, Navy, even Coast Guard. So you're dealing with a lot of the inter-service connectability, which is kind of a newer concept at that time in the military, because the Marines went and did the Marine thing, the Air Force did the Air Force thing, right, prior conflicts. And now, you as and I'm assuming you're probably a captain at this point, or yes, maybe a major.
Yep. I was a senior first lieutenant, and then I did get promoted right there on the border with Afghanistan and Pakistan. I got promoted, and it was by our local police chief. I asked him to, because he is kind of like another one of those gentlemen that I came across in life that didn't just see me as a gender, but he just saw me as a human being and a smart, caring person. And that's all I've ever asked of anybody to really think of me as, is if I'm not capable, I'm not capable. If I'm capable, then I'm capable. But he was very proud of me, and it was very rare for an Afghan to be that way. So I did. I asked him to be a part of that promotion ceremony to captain.
So what was the weather like? I've had friends that were there. I wasn't there. I had been out of the military at that point, but my friends told me that there were times that they were in the mountains and it was really cold and stuff like that. And when you see video of Afghanistan, it looks very rocky and dirty, but I'm sure that that's not the whole country. And for generations, the Russians were there, the British were there. It's kind of like Afghanistan. They call it the graveyard of armies or something like that. What was it like? What was the terrain like? The weather like?
So where I was located was pretty cool. It was so I was in Nangarhar province, Jalalabad, and that's where a lot of the old warlords kind of retired. It has the Kabul River that goes all the way to Pakistan, and because of that, the parts of the province were very lush, very lots of greenery, palm trees. I mean, landscape-wise, it was beautiful. And then we had the Torgar Mountains to our north, and then we had the Tora Bora Mountains to the south. So we got to see a lot of, the mountainous terrain there. The snow in the winter was beautiful. And then kind of everywhere kind of in the center and out towards the west, was kind of that rocky, dusty, but kind of where we were located, though, right along the Kabul River. Man, it was just lush and beautiful. And I mean, the mosquitoes were awful, but I mean, weather-wise, that part was very nice. Out towards the west, I mean, it was just so dry, so hot. I mean, the sun's just beating down. There's no shade.
So you wind up spending how long in Afghanistan? Were you there for a year, 6 months? Yeah, a year, and then you rotate home. And then, one of the things that is, and I'm not sure they were doing it at this time, but it was definitely different in Iraq and Afghanistan, was that like when my father came home from Vietnam, he literally was on a plane and he wound up in California, Los Angeles. One plane, and he was sent home on leave, no, cooling down period. He was given so much time, and my father was on convalescent leave because he was wounded. So, he came home and that. But when you guys come back from Afghanistan, is there a cool down period? Did they send you guys to some place and try to try to tone you down as best they could?
I can't. What I can't remember is on the way back, did we have like a 1 day or 2 day? I can't remember. If I remember correctly, we stopped over maybe in Kuwait for a couple days. I think maybe it was 3. And then we got sent home in waves. But then once we got stateside, yes, you basically were, and maybe it was 2 weeks. I'm wanting to say it's 2 weeks where you couldn't just pop smoke and go on vacation or go take a trip to Mexico or whatever. You came home, the equipment started coming in, you started accounting for things, and then you had to go through like a medical review, so you went station by station. Are your finances still in order? Whose spouse left them high and dry. Let's help those folks before they go, so they really wanted to keep us like in a bubble, decompress and then send us out. So, and I think that was actually pretty smart. At first I was fighting it. I was like, oh my God, everybody just wants to go, not do anything military, like just let us go. But the more I thought about it, I was like, no, I see why they're doing this.
Especially like as an officer, enlisted people are looking to you for the answers, and you can give them the answers, but a lot of times you don't know the answer either, but they're like, hey, Captain, what's going on here? When are we going to get this? And you'll know when it's time. You'll know when it's time,
Right.
So you're stuck in the middle.
Right. What was cool though, is they knew, the troops knew, hey, this captain, this major, they're in the middle. It's not like we're top brass and can make decisions like that. So it was more of a bonding time because we were in the suck with them. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Guess what? I don't get to go anywhere either, no matter I'm a major or a commander. Yeah, we're all stuck here for 14 days. So it is what it is.
So then you're done your time in Afghanistan. You get your cool down, your deprocessing and everything from that. Where do you wind up next?
Well, I went back to Huachuca, and it was for the advanced intel course. And then I ended up back at Fort Hood. They always joke about the Fort Hood Korea rotation. And I was thinking, then just send me back to Korea. But I was like, no, they sent me back to Fort Hood. So ended up back at Fort Hood. And then I exited active duty at that point because my husband has decided, we both decided me being the breadwinner was no longer fun and cool for us. I kind of wanted to look at being a mom for the first time because it was so easy for my brain to stay focused on just intel work. I was recruited to go dark side twice. When you go back to intel school, they always scan and see who would be good candidates. And so twice I was recruited and it was so tempting, but I declined because I knew that I was the kind of person where if I went into a program like that, I'd never come back. Either one, the enemy outsmarted me and I'm no longer on the planet.
Around, right.
Or two, my brain would not be able to turn it off. It would be full immersion and nothing else. And so I was like, I can't. So we decided to go ahead and start a family. And he was also like, I'm sick and tired of my wife being the breadwinner. This whole me going to school thing sounded great at first. He's like, but he's like, as a man, I am not okay with this anymore. He's like, it's time to swap. And so we did. And I got my master's and he went to work and then we finally started a family.
So how many years total did you do in the military?
So active duty was 6, but in total with guard, then active, and then going guard again was 15.
Wow. Okay. That's so close to that 20. So close.
Man, I know, but I developed an adrenal issue, and apparently, if your adrenal glands don't function properly, it can be fatal, and therefore they said you're non-deployable. And it was at the time the military was downsizing. So because it was downsizing, and they needed to downsize quick. I mean, this was 2018. So they were drawing down from everything at that time. So they were looking for any reason to cut people. And it was just, at first I was so angry. I just had 5 more years to go. I wanted to give all of it, and continue to serve as long as I could. But, is what it is. So I went through the whole medical, board and all of that. And they said, yeah, we can't keep you. I was so crushed.
That's a difficult thing too. I just completed my medical boards and it took me 2.5 years to get approved for stuff that they knew about. And the VA definitely, needs a work, but that's a separate podcast. But the VA definitely needs some work. Over 2.5 years for provable stuff is just too long.
100%. Yep. It's right there in my medical record, 7 times. What's the no-brainer here? Yeah, 100%.
So then you decide to move to Texas, right?
Let's see. So I was at we were here, Fort Hood. I departed State National Guard, Texas National Guard. But then we moved to Arkansas for a little bit to stay with family because he started getting into the oil fields at the time. So because he was on rigs all the time and home 2 weeks, back out for 2 weeks, we thought, hey, let's go stay near family for a little while because I had, an infant at that point. So we got to do that for a little bit. And then the National Guard promoted me to major. And then they said, hey, we want you to do this. We want you to go to FA school, functional area. And it's for information operations. So then I went out to Fort Leavenworth for about 4 months and got trained. I was on the training side, not the jail side, to clarify.
Right.
Everybody likes to crack that joke. You went to Leavenworth? What'd you do? And then after that, we did. We came back to Texas, and that's where. So I got a job in San Antonio, and he had an oil field job in San Antonio. So it was the first time in our whole marriage where we both got to work and do what we love. It was great.
So San Antonio. So you've been to the Alamo.
Yes.
Is there a basement in the Alamo?
To be honest, I don't remember. No, I don't remember.
It's like that old Pee Wee Herman movie. They hid his bicycle in the basement of the Alamo.
Yeah. No, but that was another one of those. Oh my God, I cannot believe they knew their fate, and they said, "We don't care. We don't care. We know this is futile. We know we're all going to be dead. We don't care. Pick up arms. Let's defend. Let's do this thing." And I was just, whew. I mean, how many people in today's society would do something like that? Everybody's a me, and if I'm at risk of, nope, somebody else can die for that, not me.
So now Texas is home.
Yes,
you're a mom,
yes.
A wife. You are self-employed,
yes.
And you've also worked multiple jobs in the insurance industry and consulting. And I know before we even got on the podcast here, you were talking to somebody that you're working with as well. And so, you didn't let the bad times defeat you, and you keep the good times going. What do we have look forward to Jessica in the future? What is Jessica's goals, and where does she want to travel? What does she want to do aside from service?
That's tough because I'm very service focused at this time. What I want to start doing is, now that I feel time a little differently in my 40s than I did when I was younger, and I'm realizing what a commodity that is, especially the time you have left with your kids before they fly the coop. One of mine will be gone in 4 years if they follow the, out of the house at 18 thing. And the other in 8. But looking at how fast that time already can fly, I want to start getting them exposed to the world so that they don't have just a U.S. worldview. I had that my entire childhood, and they've had almost the exact opposite. They only know Texas, and we traveled to Arkansas. In fact, we're headed up to Greers Ferry Lake in Arkansas this weekend. So they get out a little bit, but not. And so now I'm looking at how old they are, and I'm like, I have done you a disservice as a mama. Like, I have got to get you kids out. I want to take them to an opera and teach them, etiquette and how to wear something nicer and carry themselves in certain, not just, I'm here, I'm at my house, we game a lot, I go play athletics and that's it. Like, I want to get them exposed. So I'm trying to figure out what travel opportunities would be enjoyable, even though they're traveling with their parents, somewhat enjoyable for a teenager.
Yeah, I follow you. It's there's a big world out there to explore, and somebody like you that has been on the go their whole life, sometimes you just want to find out one place to settle down, but then, you're like, hey man, the grass is growing under my feet. Where do I want to go? What do I want to do? And you work so hard and to provide for your family and yourself and to keep your mental stability going. And you got to kind of figure out at the end of the day, what are you working for and where do you want to go? And that's tough. And that's tough, especially in your 40s like we are.
Yeah. I mean, I want to take them to New York and get them on a subway and let them figure out how to read a map and see how subway lines work and, bus lines, train lines. Like, I want to make it to where if they get dropped off into whatever or separated from a group or anything, no stress. I got this. I can figure out my way around.
And, I'd kind of like to ask you this one question, and I know this might be a tough one for you, but if you could say one thing to our listeners, especially, your fellow veterans that, have been through the ordeals like you have, what's the one message you would give to them about living the rest of their life?
Yeah, that's a tough one. I mean, because I am kind of at that same point where it's like, okay, I always said I knew what I want to be when I grew up, and then I grew up and I got to be that. But I'm at that stage of now what? Now what? And my kids haven't even left the house. I imagine after everybody's gone, I'm going to go through another now what? I mean, I don't know that your listeners don't already know this, but just the precious commodity that time really is. It can be taken away from us tomorrow. And your health. I mean, I ignored so much during my time in service, and am paying for it dearly now because, and they will probably all remember and heard the same thing. You go to sick call, it's frowned upon. You're junk. And it was even worse as an officer because you're supposed to be the leader. And if they see a leader injured, or if they see a leader going to sick call, well, they're weak. And that kind of stuff is beaten to your head all the time. So you just did not go. And, that kind of affects the rest of life. But I don't know. I guess I would say reflect, put yourself on that deathbed at the end of life. If you look back and say, if I could only go back and just do these 3 things, maybe pick just 3 that are achievable, then stop at nothing to do those 3 things. Because you're at the end of life. And maybe it's only 1. That's fine. But don't overkill it. Don't have the bucket list of 100 things long, but maybe just, okay, if I'm on my deathbed right now and I'm about to go see the Lord, but I want to go do this 1 thing or 2 things or 3, then backward plan in that time, stop at nothing to do those.
Major Jessica Odell, United States Army retired, a life of service to her country, the people of the United States, her family, her friends, and even those that today have suffered insurance losses. She's had a life of giving, a life of love, a life of commitment, and a life of self-sacrifice for everybody. Go to her website or Facebook and check her out. Follow her on Instagram for all her great stories and adventures. We'll leave a link below. And, make sure you also follow the Kling Connection. We're on Rumble. We're on YouTube. We're on Instagram. We're on Odyssey. We have our website, klingconnection.com. We're on TikTok. And you can find us on Spotify, Apple iTunes, and all major platforms for podcasts. And make sure to follow and listen to Major Odell's great interview, one of the best that we've ever had before. It's nice to speak with a fellow soldier, especially somebody that's been there and done that. So until next time, have fun storming the castle.
And that's a wrap on today's episode of the Kling Connection Travel Talk podcast. Huge thanks to our guest, Jessica Odell, for sharing her incredible travel stories and experiences. Until next time, keep exploring, one journey at a time.